Let me invite you to jump into my shoes while I describe the following events. I'm in the middle of a vertical rock wall, only my fingers and toes keeping me in contact with the rock. Fingertips clutching into small edges, not wider than a pencil. Muscles are already tired after several meters of intense climbing. The hard section of the climb approaches. A long reach with the right hand into a small hole big enough for 2 fingers. My last protection, where the rope is linked to the rock, is 3 meters away. With a potential big fall, I start feeling fear build up inside me. The rubber of my left climbing shoe is gently positioned on a tiny rock feature the size of a paperclip. Trembling, I reach out for the 2-finger pocket, catch it, but my foot slips, and before I realize, I'm flying through the air. A moment later, that feels like a lifetime, I'm hanging from the rope. After my partner successfully stopped the fall. I'm safe, but shaking. The intensity of the experience was too much for me to chew on, and I don't want to face this fall again. I ask my partner to bring me down, I collect my gear and head back home, defeated. It is no secret that fear can strongly affect our performance. Its presence in rock climbing is to be expected, as the playground is foreign to us. The exposure to the heights and the possibility of falling can easily ignite fear even in experienced climbers. Although these fears are not always justified, they can surely undermine our commitment and attention in the task at hand. I have been in the sport of rock climbing for almost 2 decades. Since then, I learned to keep a healthy interaction with my fear of falling. But it was not always like that. As a beginner climber, I was terrified by the idea of having a bad fall. So I would just not risk any. In consequence, I was always climbing considerably below my limit. And to make things worse, on the few occasions that I did fall, I would almost surely get myself some sort of injury, which only fed into my approach of avoiding falling altogether. But no matter how big my fear of falling was, my calling for climbing was always bigger. This helped me to stay curious and to pay attention to how other climbers around me were dealing with this issue. Eventually, I came across the opportunity to take part in a mental training course for climbing. Part of this course consisted in practical exercises to learn how to take safe falls. In other words, we have to practice falling. We will take small incremental steps. First, we will practice a short fall as many times as needed, until it felt natural. And only then we will move into slightly bigger falls. And consistency was the key. So I adopted this method. I made it a habit in every training session. I would literally, purposely practice falling, slowly pushing outside of my comfort zone. I did the work, and while falling started to become less of an issue, something funny happened. Not being distracted anymore by the fear of falling, I started to notice a much more subtle fear that, in fact, has always been there. Hidden, behind the mask of not hurting myself, there was the fear of failing. I would describe it as a sort of success anxiety. I noticed I was getting distracted in the key moments. The hard sections of the climb, when making the next move, would be the difference between falling and having a chance to succeed. I saw that the thought of succeeding, and therefore the fear of failing, was draining attention out of the moment. And then, falling and failing was like a self-fulfilled prophecy. So the question became how to deal with this newly discovered fear. And I couldn't help to wonder, if I previously worked on my fear of falling by practicing falls, did that mean that I have to practice failing? Well, to some extent it did, if we think of failing as simply trying again. In climbing, there is this saying that when we tackle a climb at our limit, we fail countless times to eventually succeed one. But this can be a hard pill to swallow if we keep that dreadful fear of failure in the back of our mind. So slowly I started to see that the key was changing my paradigm about failure. And I like to call it focusing on the small victories. For example, instead of putting my attention on the end result and thinking in absolute terms of success and failure, I would choose to redirect my attention into what tiny little thing was a little bit better than before on each time I would fail. I would raise the question to myself, okay, I'd failed to complete the climb, but was there any improvement? Did I make it to a higher point than before? Even if I fell in the same place as always, was my body position better? Was I feeling less exhausted? If absolutely nothing worth of positive remark would come to my mind, then I would ask myself, what can I do differently the next time? By detaching myself from the end result, I was able to put my attention into the journey. The accumulation over time of small victories or tiny improvements would allow me to stay motivated and on track. And here is the paradox about this. By doing so, reaching the end goal becomes only a matter of time. This is a powerful mindset that anyone can apply in any field of life. By taking small steps towards our goals, by focusing in action and not in destination, by setting up safety nets around us that allow us to practice with relatively small consequences when we do fail. These are tools that help us step towards our dreams when fear stands in the way. And don't you agree with me that pursuing our dreams is reason enough for taking a closer look into the face of fear? We all have dreams at some point or another in our lives. It could be small dreams, learning to cook, taking up dancing lessons, or advancing in our careers. Or it could be big dreams, so big that the sheer thought of bringing them into the world makes us feel dizzy. Personally, I dream of a world with less fear and more dreamers. Simply because I believe our human existence has to be more than simply working until retirement and dropping dead. Pursuing our dreams makes us curious. It is a wake-up alarm from the slumber of daily routine, bad news in the media, and this conformist idea that making efforts is worthless because we can make no difference in this world. We must learn to see fear not as something stopping us from becoming who we want to be, but as the key that opens the door towards the path that we need to follow. This is my call to action to you, right here and right now. Close your eyes and take a moment to think about all those things that you would love to do, but for A, B, C, or D reasons, you are not doing it. Take your time. Got it? So open your eyes and think, what is behind those reasons? Because We cannot work with our fears if we don't even recognize that they exist. This is the first step, and perhaps the hardest one. But after that, well, it is just being willing to take a few falls, to fail a few times, and to set sail into a journey to live richer, happier, and more fulfilling lives for ourselves, the communities we live in, and humanity as a whole. Thank you.